Saludos y bienvenidos. Welcome. My name is Dr. Yomaira Figueroa Vázquez, and I am the Directora of CENTRO, the Center for Puerto Rican Studies at Hunter College. I want to thank you all so much for joining us tonight at Centro in El Barrio for this event supported by el Museo del Barrio. We are so excited to welcome you. Yes. We are so excited to welcome you all here for the launch of Vanessa Díaz and Petra Rivera-Rideau's book, P FKN R, How Bad Bunny Became the Global Voice of Puerto Rican Resistance. I want to take a second to give a special shout out and welcome to our Chancellor, Dr. Felix Matos, who is here with us. Fun fact, there was a time in his previous life where he was the director of Centro. And that is a really beautiful memory to have. And it's really beautiful to have someone at CUNY and leadership that has that love for Puerto Rican history and the Puerto Rican community and for Latinos and communities of color. I'm also happy to welcome Councilmember Tiffany Cavang from Queens representing. Thank you. We have a big Queens contingent at Centro, so I know they're hyped right now. Yeah, okay, yeah. So this book launch is timely as it comes at the heels of the Benito Ball, el Super Tazón. ¿Quién lo vio? It is the most watched Super Bowl halftime show of all time. It's gotten over 4 billion views, and you might have noticed the powerful imagery present throughout the performance, one that reflects the lived experiences of Puerto Ricans in the archipelago and the diaspora. This is not an accident or an isolated incident. Bad Bunny's body of work has been a love letter to Puerto Rico, an island or a group of islands which has come to contend with mass exodus of its people for decades, a fiscal control board that has gutted social programs, and a growing climate change crisis. These experiences and more are reflected in Bad Bunny's music, and we are delighted to celebrate scholarships which seek to understand the intersections of art and resistance. Through a series of original interviews with artists like De La Ghetto, Jowell Randy, Tainy, Mag, and others, this book traces Bad Bunny's career from his early days on SoundCloud to the release of DeBÍ TiRAR MáS FOToS in 2025. This book, authored by Professors Vanessa Díaz and Petra Rivera-Rideau, and published in Duke University Press, utilizes Bad Bunny's body of work and subsequent explosion as a global superstar to provide deeper analysis of the past 30 years in Puerto Rican politics and history. And here to talk a little bit more about the role of Museo del Barrio is Cynthia Carrión. Por aquí. And I'll join you again to introduce our panelists, and then we'll get started. Okay.
Good evening, buenas noches. So on behalf of El Museo del Barrio, I just want to say thank you. Can we give it up to our amazing colleagues at Centro and this amazing for hosting this very important conversation. We're really especially glad to be part of tonight's launch. Perdóname, mami, pero tengo que decir esto. Bueno. No, pero importante, right? Like we have to be able to say the words, right? So that fucking edit. How Bad Bunny became the global voice for Puerto Rican resistance. And again, I just, I won't say too long, but just to say El Museo is proud to be here tonight. We welcome all of you to our exhibition, Hangueando, as well as on April 23rd, we're opening Double Exposure, the first museum survey dedicated to groundbreaking Puerto Rican photographer Sophie Rivera. The work continues. We're here for that. We're all witnesses for that. And again, we just welcome you all and thank you for this incredible opportunity. Gracias.
Thank you, Cynthia. You've always been such a champion of the community, especially in your role at Museo del Barrio in a time that we needed more than ever. Thank you. So I am going to introduce the panelists as well as the moderator. And I also want to shout out some of our other sponsors, including, the state of New York, the city of New York, but also our co-sponsors, Museo del Barrio, as we just noted, as well as the Mellon Foundation, who has been really supportive of Centro and offering us funds to kind of reimagine our research and our community impact. So thank you so much to all of the funders. But today we are going to be joined by Petra Rivera-Rideau and Vanessa Díaz. These are the creators of the Bad Bunny Syllabus. And we're also going to be joined by Rolling Stone's deputy music editor, Julissa Lopez, and they're going to explore Bad Bunny's place in a long tradition of infusing both joy and protest into music and honoring the many evolving forms of daily resistance to oppression and colonialism, which are part and parcel of Puerto Rican life. So Petra Rivera-Rideau, who's standing in the corner over there, is associate professor and the chair of American Studies at Wellesley College. How is this book tour going with the chairing situation? Wow, okay. She is the author of Remixing Reggaeton, The Cultural Politics of Race in Puerto Rico, which came out from Duke University Press in 2015. I do want to share also that Petra and I went to grad school together at UC Berkeley. And when Petra was writing her dissertation, I had the opportunity to go to some concerts with her as part of her research. It was the best. I was like, why am I not doing this? This is the best thing ever. She is also the, I would say the author of Fitness Fiesta, Selling Latinx Culture Through Zumba, also from Duke in 2024. And now P FKN R, How Bad Bunny Became the Global Voice of Puerto Rican Resistance, which is co-authored with her co-author, Vanessa Díaz. She has also co-edited the Afro-Latinos in Movement, Critical Approaches to Blackness and Transnationalism in the Americas, which came out of her early work in the Afro-Latino Working Group at UC Berkeley, and that was published in 2016. Dr. Rivera-Rideau and Dr. Díaz co-founded the Bad Bunny Syllabus, which can be found at badbunnysyllabus.com. Petra's article, If I Were You, Tego Calderon's Diasporic Interventions, published in the premier journal Soul Acts, won the inaugural Blanca Silvestrini Prize for Best Article in Puerto Rican Studies at the 2019 Latin American Studies Association Conference. She also frequently appears in popular media such as NPR, CNN, Rolling Stone, and others. Vanessa Díaz is a multimedia ethnographer and journalist whose work focuses on issues of race, gender, labor, and popular culture across the Americas. She is the co-author of this book. I don't know if I can say it again. Am I going to get bleeped? And she's also the author of Manufacturing Celebrity, Latino Paparazzi, and Women Reporters in Hollywood, which came out of Duke in 2020. She also co-created the Bad Bunny Syllabus Project, and she's the director of the bilingual documentary film Cuban Hip Hop Desde el Principio, which came out in 2006. She has published as a journalist in outlets such as The Washington Post, USA Today, Latina, Rolling Stone, and People Magazine. This conversation today is going to be moderated by Julissa Lopez. Raise your hand, Julissa. Ahí estamos. And Julissa is the deputy music editor at Rolling Stone, where she oversees pop and Latin coverage. She's written cover stories on Shakira, Bad Bunny, Madonna, and Maluma. Before joining Rolling Stone, she was a regular contributor at The Nation and Remezcla. Her work has also appeared in Vogue, GQ, Billboard, and The Guardian, The Washington Post, among other publications. She is the recipient of the 2024 Deadline Club Award from the Society of Professional Journalists and a 2023 LA Press Club Award winner, as well as a 2021 Lowell Thomas Award winner. She was one of the LAMC's 2023 Wonder Women of Latin Music. And with that, and without any further delay, I am honored to hand it over to Julissa, to Petra, and Vanessa to discuss P FKN R, How Bad Bunny Became the Global Voice of Puerto Rican Resistance. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for coming. This is amazing. First of all, congratulations, Petra and Vanessa.
Thank you.
I was telling you guys that I've seen the book everywhere. I was at the airport the other day in Puerto Rico and I saw it too. Tell me a little bit about what the reception has felt like and what it's like to have this piece of work out in the world now.
It's awesome. I love it. No, it's really great. It's very exciting. The book is in English and in Spanish. Just pointing that out in case you prefer Spanish, and an audiobook. And it's just really great. And I'm really excited to be here. Centro is a very special place for me. My father, who's not an academic, but like very involved in Centro at various times in his life. So it's always nice to come here and to see so many beautiful friends and colleagues. And I do want to give a special shout out to my sister Carmen, who was the first person who ever showed me a Bad Bunny song. It was Tu no vives así with Arcángel. So without you, I wouldn't be here. But yeah,
Yeah, it's been awesome. Julissa also is crucial to this. Like, if it weren't for Julissa, Tainy wouldn't be in our book. There's so many other things that
our book may not exist.
Yeah, she believed in it. She saw the vision. We're super grateful. We're so grateful to Centro. We're so grateful to Museo. This community is so important for all of us. Like, many of us wouldn't be here without this. East Harlem is the first neighborhood my family migrated to during Operation Bootstrap. So this just being here is so meaningful for so many reasons. There's so many close colleagues and friends and people who are chosen family here in the room tonight. I also want to recognize Bianca, one of the students who helped us create the Bad Bunny syllabus. So yeah.
Shout out to Bianca.
And I think that's the thing is, right, we all know we need each other, we need community, and like these moments are really about kind of recognizing that. And so of course also Petra has just been so amazing to work with. And if you haven't done group projects, do the group projects. It's way better.
Indeed.
Well, Petra, you kind of alluded to this already, but I remember this book when it was just an idea. We talked about it early on. You guys have contributed to Rolling Stone. We've known each other for a long time. So I want to go way back, and you've already told us a little bit that your sister is responsible for you hearing Bad Bunny for the first time. But I want to know kind of what your first impressions of him were as an artist.
I will be honest, like, it took me a minute to get into Bad Bunny in those Tu no vives así times. But for me, a lot of this book actually comes out of my relationship with my students. So my students, they were in 2018. I taught a Latin class, and all my students were writing papers about Claro, the music video. And I was like, oh, I guess you guys like this guy. Like 75% of you are writing all your projects about Bad Bunny.
Tell us a little bit about Caro. That
Caro is
they were getting
a single from his first album, Por Siempre. Means expensive. So like the message of the song is like, whoever you are, you're worth something. But the music video was really important because in that video, he switches places with a model named Jasmine Joy, and they're like, performing in this very androgynous way. Sometimes you don't know who's who. And then he has like an Easter egg moment with Ricky Martin. And so there were all of these. This was a video that I think really showed the ways that he was pushing the boundaries of masculinity in reggaeton and in Puerto Rico and embracing a form of queerness. So it was a hugely important video for my students. So they were all writing papers about it. And then in 2019, some students at Harvard brought him to give a little talk. It was like a group of students who brought hip hop producers. And one of them had found Bad Bunny and invited him. And I was in conversation with him. And this was right after the summer of 2019, when he had stopped his tour to join these protests in Puerto Rico. And it was really interesting to talk to him at that time. And you could see like all of these things he's doing now, starting at that very young age, kind of percolating in his brain. And so all of those experiences gave me the idea to create a class, which I did at Wellesley in 2022 is the first time that I taught the course. There are now Bad Bunny courses in lots of places, at Yale, at Georgetown, at Emory, all over the place. Mine was the first Bad Bunny class. So I did that. Yeah, thank you. And then one day I got an email from Vanessa. She didn't take it from there.
Yeah, in the summer of 2022, I was getting ready to organize my class that I had been teaching with Bad Bunny for some time. And Caro was a crucial song for me too. That was the first song that made me think there's like a lot more going on here. That coupled with his first performance on Jimmy Fallon that we'll talk about a little bit more later on, just kind of seeing the way that he was switching things up. And I found him super interesting. I found him engaging, the style, right? Just all of these unique things about him. But then the summer of 2019, when he joined the protests, that was a really big turning point for me. And that was what made me go, oh, I think I want to start thinking about a course about it, but then the pandemic hits, etc. Fast forward, Petra teaches the class. I reach out to her, and we started dialoguing, and that was basically how the Bad Bunny Syllabus project was born. Just as I was about a month into teaching the class, we launched that. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. But he's really an interesting artist. And I think as educators, for us to be able to find like the tools to think expansively about, culture, popular culture, its relationship to politics, how to get students engaged. So it's like, it just happens that it also happens to be a really amazing music that we get to enjoy too.
I think it's important to really specify that the book is not a biography of Bad Bunny. It's not like an overview of his career. It really positions him as a figure of pride and resistance in Puerto Rico, and a voice in Puerto Rico. And you outline really well in the book what this idea of resistance means. I wonder if you can kind of break it down and talk sort of about the context that we're talking in.
Yeah, I mean, in the introduction, we do really try to explain that when we talk about resistance, just as I was saying, he's helpful to think sort of more expansively about a lot of things. And one of those things is resistance, right? That resistance is a multifaceted thing. And in the context of Puerto Rican history, what we know, if we read like literally any Puerto Rican history book, but I'm going to think about Jowell Melendez Barrio's book that maybe some of you are familiar with, the Puerto Rican history, where it's like literally since the beginning of colonization, since the Spaniards arrived in Puerto Rico, Puerto Ricans have been resisting, starting with the Tainos. Like, the history of resistance is literally the history of Puerto Rico. And so sort of every moment in cultural evolution in Puerto Rico, including music, including dance, has been a form of resistance. That's literally like bomba, right? We know the history of bomba, which is dance and music, right? This emerges from enslaved communities who are using it to organize and to also experience joy in community, right? And then plena, and then and salsa and reggaeton, and all of these genres are about telling the history through music, communicating, organizing, being in community. And so we see Bad Bunny really as just a continuation of this legacy of music as resistance, but it's not just the music. As we know, if we learned anything from the summer of 2019, it's that Puerto Ricans are the most imaginative when it comes to resistance. And so how do we move forward as a people? How do we work towards justice? Well, we need art, we need dance, we need all of these different kinds of things to think expansively about how to make change. And so that's how we're approaching resistance in the book.
Yeah, that was really good. That was a very good answer and a hard act to follow. I think the other thing I would say about this book, to your point that it is not a biography, right? So the book starts in 2016. Bad Bunny was a SoundCloud rapper. People like my sister. That's why my sister is so like hardcore BB fan that she listened to Bad Bunny when he was stuff. Yes. Anyway, so he comes out. He's like posting his songs on SoundCloud, and he's in Latin trap, right? And so if you have been listening to reggaeton for a while, like around Despacito comes out in 2017, Bailando's in 2014. A lot of people are frustrated. They think that reggaeton has become very popified, and Latin trap kind of comes up to fill this void, right? And Latin trap borrows musically from trap music in Atlanta, but it has lyrics in Spanish, very explicit lyrics. And in the book, we interviewed De La Ghetto, who it was really instrumental in the creation of Latin trap, right? And talking about how this time, which was very difficult, kind of aligned with this sort of like dark kind of hardcore type musical sounds that are coming out of Latin trap, right? And so 2016 is also a pivotal moment in the history of Puerto Rico, because this is when the Obama administration passes the Promesa bill. And so Puerto Rico, we talk about in great length the origins of the debt crisis, and you can read it for the details. But Promesa essentially, because Puerto Rico is a colony of the United States, right, they cannot declare bankruptcy, and it reaches this point where the debt becomes unpayable. And so Promesa was a piece of legislation that was meant to allow Puerto Rico to restructure its debt. and it installed something called the Fiscal Oversight and Management Board, which in Puerto Rico, many people refer to as La Junta, which was a group of people, many of whom are Puerto Ricans, who worked for the banks that owned a lot of Puerto Rico's debt. And their job was to figure out how to restructure this debt so that the bondholders would get paid back. And the governor of Puerto Rico serves as a non-voting member on the Junta. So this is a very controversial thing, right? La Junta is very unpopular. So all of this stuff is happening in 2016. So from the very beginning of Bad Bunny's career, we see him kind of start to engage with some of these issues. And then we got to his first album in 2018, Por Siempre, on his very first appearance on mainstream US television, which is on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. And
Yeah, we actually have a clip of.
Do we have a clicker?
Clicker.
Right. Thank you. And while we're waiting for that, I'm going to just add, because I think this is important on the point of resistance, that in the beginning, because, you know, I was talking about the evolution of Puerto Rican music as resistance. In the beginning, we got a lot of pushback. It hasn't gone away, but we got a lot of pushback from the media, particularly Spanish language media. Like, why are you teaching a class about Bad Bunny? You should be teaching about salseros and no sé qué. And like, now that has changed, I think, because who he is as an artist has become even more clear. And so that's right.
I feel like you know what you're doing.
Well, we'll find out if that's true. Okay. So I think that people have really started to see more how he's an artist of resistance. And what we show in the book is that that's really always been the case. And so this is really one of the first examples where we get to see why we believe that is the case.
Yeah, let's set it up really quick,
sorry.
just in terms of
Hang on, let me go back. All right.
just after
This is a year after
Hurricane
Hurricane Maria, his first time going on American television. And this is around the time when Trump is popping off per usual he's on Twitter, he's posting all this stuff like Puerto Ricans want everything done for them, and they're making up these stories about fake numbers. You know, we know nobody will ever know how many people died from Hurricane Maria, but we know that it wasn't 16 or 67, right? We know it was thousands and thousands. And Bad Bunny, in this consequential moment where he's just emerging, right? His first time on American television, and this is what he does. Ay, ay, ay.
He is nominated for 5 Latin American Music Awards and is making his TV debut with us tonight. We're honored, buddy. Performing Estamos Bien. Give it up for Bad Bunny!
After 1 year of the hurricane, there's still people without electricity in their homes. More than 3,000 people died and Trump is still in denial. But you know what?
Let's talk a little bit about not just the clip and the actual moment, but also the song, because this is also a really important song in the context that it's coming in.
Yeah, I mean, estamos bien means we're good, right? Again, this is a few months like after Hurricane Maria hits. And the song, you know, is like, I'm good with or without money. I fly private, but also I pop tires on all the potholes and I don't have electricity. And it's you know, it's a song that I think is both speaks to this constant theme in Bad Bunny's work, which is that Puerto Rico is this amazing, beautiful place that he cares so deeply about. And it's also a place that's tremendously flawed, where there's a lot of struggle and a lot of difficulty. And I think we see that in Estamos Bien. And it becomes sort of like this anthem of kind of post-Maria life. It's also the first time that he connects with Tainy. It's the second time. The first song they did together was I Like It, but it's the first time that they're working together in person, where Bad Bunny had sort of made this song and then brought Tainy in to help kind of clean it up. And Tainy is, if you don't know who Tainy is, he's one of the biggest reggaeton producers, if not the biggest reggaeton producer of our time. He's only 36, but he's been around for 20 years. It's very hard to explain what his
14.
catalog is, but if you give me a reggaeton song, I'll bet you money that Tainy made it. And so it's like this moment where he is both coming out, you know, in this sort of like mainstream first album sort of artist, but at the same time, as you saw, using this platform. And I do think it's really important to point out that this is not a, like, Spanish language artists don't find themselves in mainstream platforms like Jimmy Fallon very often. And as you can see at this time, this was like right before I met him, you know, his English, he was practicing that to give that speech, right? And one of the things that I think was so great when we talked to lots of other artists about this moment is how for them, it was very inspiring to see someone who was willing to take this major platform and do what many of them thought was a big risk, which was to go and criticize the US president, right? So I think we see the kind of beginning of his sound, the beginning of his ability to integrate this political critique into these fun songs, and then also like the kind of beginning of his, I sort of totally lost my train of thought. But yes, it's the start of a lot of things. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just think this is such a critically important moment. And when we think about Bad Bunny as the global voice of Puerto Rican resistance, we're not saying he's the only voice or that he's the voice. He is the global voice because of the way that he's used his platform strategically. And so, as Petra was mentioning, right, this is the second Spanish language artist ever to be on the show. Now it's a lot more common. And he's willing to kind of risk it all, right? He truly is. In these moments, this was really a risk, and he determined it was worth it. And I think part of what makes him unique, and part of why I think people kind of get on board in terms of being like, oh, let me dig a little deeper here, right? Because this song could be interpreted without the message. So you kind of have to dig deeper. We have footnoted, translated lyrics on our website because a lot of these references get missed, right? Like the messaging about the electricity not being there and the boquetes and so forth. But in this moment, we really start to see that the gravity of his platform is not lost on him. And I think that that's something we all took a cue from here.
So we see kind of all of these ways that this is percolating, right? From Caro and his sort of inspection of gender from this moment after Huracán Maria, and then the protests come, which you've talked a little bit about, and it's this watershed moment in a lot of ways. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about what that was like, him leaving his tour to join the protest on the ground in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, I'll start because actually it kind of is a continuation of what I was just talking about. Actually, we see that he is speaking about political issues, right? But part of what, again, draws people in is that he's not out there saying like, yo soy independentista, and then maybe kind of like turning people off who aren't kind of that mind already. He's thinking really creatively about how to address politics and what are the people feeling? How do I communicate that in a nonpartisan way? And what's unique about 2019, he's on tour in Europe. He leaves his tour to go participate in these mass protests, and he is front and center holding the flag con azul clarito, right, that he now talks about in his songs, but the light blue flag, which is the flag that existed prior to US colonialism, is very much used as a symbol of independence. If you're holding the light blue flag, then it doesn't, you don't have to be like, oh, well, you're for independence only, but it signals that, right? And so seeing him at the kind of front lines of the protest with people, with the independence flag, with Presidente Enile, who we know, right, and several other artists who we know are for independence, it really started, but never saying it, right? It started to make us go, like, what is he really thinking about? What is he kind of advocating for? And Petra, I'd love for you to share about the conversations you had with him about the protests, because that was so crucial.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. And so the protests, I think we also see a couple of things, right? Well, first, I want to say about Apilando los Cuchillos. So they go to the protest, but they also create this song, Apilando los Cuchillos, Residente's idea. He calls up Bad Bunny, who is kind of like his mentee, and his sister Ile, to make this song. They're not together when they make the song, they know the theme is sharpening the knives. They're all over the place. They're making their verses. They send it to the producer overnight. They pop out this song. They put it on YouTube and it becomes like the sound. Like Ile told us, you know, the next day she goes out to the protest and her song is like all over the place, you know. And it's a really, really searing critique of Ricardo Rosselló and his administration. And so that song, I think, is also like a really important moment where we really, like, he's not hinting, he's like being very clear, right? In that one. But I think the protest is also this interesting moment. So when I met him at Harvard was a few months after these protests had happened. And, you know, he was very like, I just did that because I care about my country and I couldn't miss it. Like, this was this historic thing. I had to be there. This was really important to me. He, you know, he made it very clear, like, I wasn't doing this because I wanted to be like the icon of this protest, right? He did it because he felt this like civic duty to participate. And I think these protests are also, in terms of his career, an important moment where we see this tension between him, and it's one of the arguments we make in the book, like him as a global superstar, a global voice because of the platform that he has and the recognition that he has of these issues, and him as like seeing himself as a sort of like regular guy who happens to make songs, right? And I think at the same time, we also see the impact of having him participate in these political moments, because his participation enables, like, suddenly a lot of US news outlets are paying attention when they weren't paying attention before. And so I think like to those protests happening. So I think it's the start, like we see his star rising, and we also see this tension that he's kind of grappling with throughout his career continue.
I think you start to see too in the music, kind of how the music evolves as well. And I want to get to Un Verano Sin Ti, which was a historic, massive album, the first album in Spanish nominated for a Grammy for Album of the Year. Talk to me about how these ideas kind of start coming together in that album, especially on a song like El Apagón.
Yeah, I mean, El Apagón is a really, really important song for Bad Bunny. I think it's probably, you know, it is a really wonderful protest song that does a lot of different things. And so it's almost like 3 songs in one, right? So we start with the Ismael Rivera sample. We start with, again, this theme of Puerto Rico is great and Puerto Rico has problems. Puerto Rico está bien cabrón, right? And then it shifts to like this EDM song, and he's like, "Me gusta la chocha de Puerto Rico," and then it goes from there to this like very kind of haunting moment with his then girlfriend Gabriela Berlingeri singing.
Are they back together? Are they not?
Yeah, we don't know. Actually, we don't have any information about that, so don't. Just putting that out there. But Gabriela singing about, you know, make them leave, these beaches belong to me, right? So it's a song that's tackling the government corruption in Puerto Rico, you know, thinking about the colonial roots of this failing infrastructure as symbolized by electricity, right? And I just want to point out, like, when we think about the people who died for Hurricane Maria, it's not just that they died in the storm, right? Like, it's not having electricity for some people is a matter of life and death, right? And so it's not just like I don't have access to the lights. It's like I don't have access to refrigeration for my insulin that I need to live, right? And then we also have the critique of gentrification that's then followed by a 20-minute documentary about gentrification with Bianca Graulau, right? And I think it's everything about that song is so intentional. And I would say also like it's even the release of that song is intentional, right? Like they make the song and the music video and the documentary and they hold on to it. And then Hurricane Fiona comes and they're like, now it's time to release it, right? I mean, so it was meant to be this like massive political statement.
Yeah. I mean, there's several things to add there. I guess one of the things that I know Petra and we talk about in the book that's really important is that video. There's so many things, as we know from the Super Bowl performance, that if you know, you know. And if you don't know, you better start doing your research or you're just not going to get it. And that's okay, right? It doesn't have to be like the show is for everyone, the music is for everyone, but maybe you're not going to get it all. And so he kind of puts the onus on other people, right? Like, I know, Bianca, you remember in class, there's like students who don't understand what's going on and like they just have to work harder to understand. But there's also things that if it weren't for us interviewing people like Tainy, like Mag, like Cacho Lopez Mari, who sat on this stage a few years ago at the Bad Bunny Symposium and talked about the production of this, he's a really key figure in our book. And this is a really special thing, right? So Cacho Lopez Mari, who's directed multiple videos for Bad Bunny, but also for Calle 13, for Tego Calderon, like Daddy Yankee, he is the grandson of Juan Maribras, who is a really important independence leader, right, in the last century. And his Cacho's uncle was assassinated, right? He was in a political targeting that was originally intended for Juan Maribras. They killed his son. And every year they go to his uncle's tomb and they place the flag, the light blue flag. And so when Cacho was asked to do this video, one of the iconic moments from the video is when Bad Bunny is sitting on the like wall outside of Ismael Rivera's house, and there's a tattered flag behind him. That is the flag that spent a year over Cacho's uncle's tomb. It's like mind-blowing, some of these details that are in there when you just think about the way that these different histories of resistance are mixed in really unexpected ways, but all very intentional. And it's not an accident. It's not an accident that he's working with Cacho. It's not an accident that he's producing songs with Residente. It's not an accident that he's working with the people who he has kept in his circle that are working towards something different too. And, you know, even just thinking about the production of the songs, you know, talking with Mag about the making of these different moments, right? Like the production de Un Verano Sin Ti, like the Titi who's talking, that's like his friend's Titi in the Dominican Republic. And they're like, hey, like, can your Titi record this message? And then they pass it on WhatsApp. And then it ends up in, you know, the most streamed album in the history of the world is literally his homie's Titi. There's all these little kind of, it's so familiar. And I think that's why people feel connected, right? Because it sounds almost like over the top to be like, well, he's really authentic. Like he's a superstar, right? He has like a Ritz deal, an Adidas deal, Amazon, but this texture can't be made up. You can't make up that flag. That flag only could come from a year of being torn apart by the sea on the grave of an independence leader, right? Like these things are so meaningful. So, and everything is like that. And it's really, it is just this wealth of information that drove us to write the book.
You mentioned just now Mag, who is a really great figure in the book and has sort of this wealth of knowledge of how this music was made. And the book actually starts with Mag talking about the making of DTMF, which I want to get to, which we also have a help.
It's because of my video. Actually,
While they're doing that, I can start talking about like when they made the song. And so Mag is really important person in our book. Mag is a Puerto Rican Dominican guy from Brooklyn. He is, people don't know, Mag's first like sort of real breakout hit was My House by Flow Rider. You probably didn't know the same guy who made Apagón made Flow Rider's My House, but he did. He comes up through like the tutelage of Max Martin, who's a major pop producer. And he links up with Bad Bunny during the pandemic. And he goes, some of you probably saw the Instagram videos last year of Bad Bunny going on a parranda, which if you're not familiar with a parranda is like sort of like Christmas caroling, but Puerto Rican style with a band, and you go to someone's house, it's very raucous, you ask for drinks, you have a party, you move on. Mag was at the parranda, right? They were finishing up the album DeBÍ TiRAR MáS FOToS at that time. And Mag is very inspired by the parranda and goes to his room. And then the next day comes out with DTMF. And then Bad Bunny's like, oh, this is good. Let's record it. And then they go to a studio, and this is the recording. This comes from Mag's Instagram.
Yeah. It makes you smile, right? And that's like the beauty of the music. It's like the pain and the joy. It's actually a sad song, but it's like so beautiful. Like I like feel like choked up just like seeing that. And so to be fair, right? That opening in the book about that moment, that was actually from an interview that thanks to Julissa for trusting me to write about the first records that song was breaking, right? When A Plena and a salsa song were #1. And so Julissa asked me to write this piece like, hey, what does it mean for a plena song to be #1? This is crazy, right? This is a genre, El Periódico del Pueblo. It has never charted in history, you know? And like maybe all of us in the room know what a plena is, but outside of Puerto Rico and the diaspora, people do not know what a plena is. But now they do. Like on a world, this is the #1 song in the world. That's crazy. This, you know what I mean? Like the global voice, like, and so Julissa trusted me with this, and like that record broke, and I got to like talk to Mag the next day, and he's, you know, they tell us like, oh, we don't even have time to process what we're doing, but like talking to him about it in that moment, he's like, and I woke up, and you know, I had pitorro coming out of my mouth, and I was just like, hey, and like legit, he has a voice memo. He showed it to, I think he might have posted it online too, where he's like leaves the because they do everything via like a voice note, you know, and he leaves a voice note for Benito, and he's like, hey, yo tengo una idea, like una plena pero diferente, like, and that's like it is, right? It has like a different energy, and it really like it is embedded, right? As Petra was saying, this comes from the experience of him being there, and I think it's extra important to add that with Mag, right? He's from New York. He's a Dominican from New York, and prior to this, the people who were really working with Bad Bunny were all de Puerto Rico, and we all know there's tension sometimes between the diaspora and people there. And Mag told us, he's like, oh yeah, when he heard the tracks that Mag had intended for Bad Bunny via Bad Bunny's manager, that like Bad Bunny was like, hey, pero es boricua. Like, yeah, he's like, just gotta double check before we move forward here, right? And so it's really like when we think about songs like Nueva York, songs like Titi Me Preguntó, like these exist because of Mag, and these exist because of the beautiful collaborations between De La Isla y De La Diaspora. And so this song is it's that, and it's so potent.
Talk to me a little bit about how the song.
I love you guys. You're the best. Like, I want to be here all day.
Talk to me a little bit about how the song fits on the bigger project of DeBÍ TiRAR MáS FOToS, because when this album came out, obviously it feels like such a connection to everything that you're talking to, such a continuation of these things. I want to hear about your reaction when you guys heard the album, and kind of, I know that there was a special place in the book also where
Yeah, well, right. So it's worth pointing out that we finished the book before DeBÍ TiRAR MáS FOToS came out.
Yeah, we turned it in December of 24.
And then we were like,
wait a second.
Yeah, we were like, oh no, this is terrible. This is like this guy's, you know, this is like, oh God, what are we gonna do? But what was so cool was that we didn't actually have to do that much changes, right? Because what we argue in this book is that like what we're seeing happening with Bad Bunny and DeBÍ TiRAR MáS FOToS, he's been doing for a long time, right? He's a very consistent artist. Things, the different styles and things may have changed some, but his commitments have always been clear. And so it was actually incredibly easy to integrate DeBÍ TiRAR MáS FOToS into this book. And then in terms of this song and the album, right? Like, I mean, a lot of what makes people so excited about DeBÍ TiRAR MáS FOToS is the ways that Bad Bunny blends reggaeton and Latin trap with these different like Puerto Rican musical traditions, like bomba, like plena, like salsa, right? And this song, I think, is a great example of that. But I think it's also just like a very, I think for me, that album is also really interesting because it's a new way of doing these things, right? He's, for me, my favorite song on that album today, but has been for a while, is Pitorro de Coco, right? Because when you hear that cuatro riff, it's like I know that song, right? It's like I've heard that song a million times for my entire life, and it's sort of sacred, right? It's like a holiday melody that is sort of sacred. And to take that and turn that into a song about breaking up with a girl and having people be like, you messed with our sacred song, but it actually sounds really good, is I think a very like shows like his musical chops. And that's also a mag one. But yeah, I think this song really represents those musical fusions, the feeling of community, the feeling of cultural pride, that kind of leads through that entire record.
And I think it's worth pointing out that, right, Petra spoke to the fact that it wasn't hard for us to integrate this because if you look at his track record, it's a through line. But many people didn't see that because of the album that preceded this, which is Nadie Sabe Lo Que Va a Pasar Mañana. And a lot of people are like, oh, he lost his way. He's dating a gringa and like not just anyone, but right. But and making all these things about her. But if you actually listen to the album, it has posturing and all the accoutrement of a trap album, but it is so focused on Puerto Rico, right? The rumors that like, oh, the horse, that's all because Kendall Jenner likes horses. No, it's not. It's Vuelve Candy Be, right? That's a very important horse in the history of Puerto Rico, the first racehorse to win $1 million. It's all centered around these themes of Puerto Rican pride and identity. And in fact, he was working on DeBÍ TiRAR MáS FOToS when that album comes out. Nueva York had already been produced when that album comes out. And people they're not like, oh, he's changed. No, this is the same guy. He's been doing all of this. He just has, he likes to do a lot of different kinds of things. He likes
20s.
Yeah. But
So that, yeah.
But I'll drop this little tidbit because it's gonna make you angry. But but one of the things in one of the chapters we talk about how he's this massive star, but has been at the margins still in certain ways. And during the time of Nadie Sabe, I went on a ride along with paparazzi who I'd worked with on my previous chapter. It was the paparazzo who took
Your
the
previous
first
book. Yeah.
Yeah.
Manufacturing
manufacturing
celebrity.
celebrity. Sorry, the first photographer to actually get images of Kendall Jenner with Bad Bunny. And so I went on a ride along with him, and he explained to me that they were only interested, like media would not buy the pictures of just Bad Bunny by himself. They actually needed him to be with Kendall for there to be value on those images. And so this is where it's like that tension between he's this he's the biggest star, and then he's still marginalized. And I think, with something like the Super Bowl, we saw that super clearly. It's like he's doing the Super Bowl halftime show and also like deport him, and also all these things like that they just can't even comprehend how he is a mainstream figure. And we've seen this very many times, from the lack of translating his songs and speeches on primetime television, all these different moments that show again that tension between he's a massive global superstar, but he is also this Puerto Rican guy who experiences a lot of discrimination still.
And I just want to give a sense, like to take you back to that time when he could not sell photos of Bad Bunny alone, right? This was a few months before he headlined Coachella, right? We're not talking about like some podunk guy nobody knows about, right? He is, right? So this is the time before the DeBÍ TiRAR MáS FOToS when we thought Bad Bunny was at his peak, right? And so just to give a context, right? Because I think that's really important. It's not just that they could not sell pictures of Bad Bunny alone. They could not sell pictures of Bad Bunny alone at a time when he was, just as huge, if not bigger, than a Beyonce or a Taylor
He had
Swift.
just had he was the most streamed artist 2020, 2021, 2022. This is the beginning of 2023. He's been the world's most streamed artist 3 years in a row, and they're like, we don't want his images.
I think that actually ties in nicely into this next moment, which I think all of us saw, the Super Bowl. Let's watch this clip and then get a little into kind of what he did on that stage.
We let you get the little we let you get the little dance move then.
You guys wrote a piece for us the day after this happened that really breaks down everything that he did. Obviously, this comes sort of in the middle of all this rhetoric, all of this crazy conversation that ties into kind of what we were saying before about the how he's been marginalized. Let's talk first about what we see in this. What he actually does when he gets on stage, because it's this anticipated moment, and then what is beneath it?
Yeah, I mean, Petra and I, we didn't know what to expect. And I think coming off of the Grammys, which was so explicit and pointed, we were like, we don't know we know he's gonna have the message, but like, how's he gonna do it? And he just kind of, we were all just kind of speechless too, right? It was like the moment where he got the Grammy and we were like, he was like, what happened? That's kind of what it was like watching.
What does he say at the Grammy?
At the Grammy when he's like, ice out? And he's like, he like speaks in English again, like in the first, right? That's one of the only times we see him address an American broadcast in English, right? So the gravity of the moment is clear.
Yeah, oh, and I was gonna say, right, that one, everybody knew he was gonna win Música Urbana, right? Like, who else was gonna win that? So, but nobody knew if he was really gonna win Album of the Year. So it's not just that he said ice out in English. It was the one guaranteed moment he had on that stage to say something.
Right. And then the second one was a totally different approach. And so we knew he is so strategic and thoughtful about getting the message across. But I mean, from beginning to end, I think that the halftime show was a masterclass in how to fuse art and resistance and how to really think creatively about storytelling with every single moment. Every single moment was a different story. And so what we saw in the clip that we watched, right, was we spoke a lot about El Apagón, about the blackouts. And this moment where the dancers on these electrical poles, and it's the same, they're in the same outfits. It's essentially the same workers who are cutting cane in the beginning. It's that continuation of the struggle, right? Wearing the pava hat, to signal these people have been struggling throughout this entire time. And when we think about teaching the courses, right, like that was not lost on my students. When we shared the Rolling Stone piece that talks about this moment, we had just watched the documentary specials about the fact that people all over Puerto Rico were self-teaching how to rewire electricity to bring power into their families' homes, risking their lives. Like everyone's like, oh, Bad Bunny's climbing that pole without any protective gear. Yeah, just like all the Puerto Ricans who were doing the same thing in Puerto Rico, trying to bring power to all of their communities. It was so evocative. It was so intense. And that's really like representing the gravity of what it means to be Puerto Rican, for it to be bien cabrón.
Yes. Yes. And I think I agree with everything that you said. I mean, when I saw them dangling from the poles, that is the first thing that I thought about. The images and the stories of the people who were like, I can't be living without electricity for another month. It's been 9 months and I can't do it. And taking it upon themselves to do that kind of stuff. So I think this moment to us is also really important because a lot of people didn't understand what was happening, right? So like our students understood, and I think this is like really the central part of the book, right? Like to really understand Bad Bunny, you have to understand this history. You have to understand what's happening. So this is a quote. Someone sent me a tweet from Laura Loomer, who's a conservative influencer and advisor to Donald Trump. And she said, well, that's what
I know.
So it's kind of ironic how Bad Bunny was dancing on an electrical post at the Super Bowl halftime show. Puerto Rico isn't exactly known for having reliable electricity. He could have highlighted the electrical grid crisis in PR and done some good with his platform, but he chose degeneracy, right? And so I love this. I love this tweet because it's actually, until you get to like the end, right? Like, it's like, that is exactly what he was doing. But it just was like, whoosh, you know? And so, I mean, I like this tension. I like to end with this tension here because for me, it like really exemplifies like why you should read our book, right? Which is that you will never make this mistake that Laura Loomer has made. You will know exactly what he's doing with all these symbols.
All right. And so I think with that, we're actually going to take some questions from the audience. I'm going to give you my mic. And then if you guys just want to line up.
Like if it weren't Laura Loomer, we would actually.
Are you having people go over
Yeah,
there?
we'll do that one.
Yeah. Okay. line up over there for the questions.
I'm gonna start with the ones from Zoom first because we do have folks on Zoom joining us.
Hi, Zoom.
Hey, Zoom world.
Yay.
How did you find Bad Bunny? And when you heard the song, what was going through your head?
When we first heard him, I mean, so like I said, it was Tu no vive así. I enjoy music videos, and I watched the music video. And I don't know if you've seen the music video, but it's very creepy. It's a very creepy video with Arcángel dressed as a devil with a creepy mask coming out of an ice cream truck. And my first thought was like, dang, that is really creepy. So I remember sitting in my parents' living room watching this video being like, oh God, I'm so creeped out. But yes, that was when I first discovered him. That's what I thought.
I cannot pinpoint the exact moment. I talk a lot about Ghetto, but I very well knew who he was at that point. So I mean, like, it's like one of those things where reversing, I'm like, maybe it was Soy Peor, but I definitely just always remember his voice, like just being like, what is it's so unique. And I think that's like one of the really interesting things about him. He as we now know from like DMF and others, remember, like, he can really sing. And I was really just struck by his voice, I think.
And I would just add that, you know, it's interesting that you say that because I think for Bad Bunny, you know, he very, very quickly becomes the face and voice of Latin trap, right? And I think it is precisely because the songs that he's coming out with are very unique, right? And so a song like Soy Peor, which becomes a big hit for him, I mean, that's a song that is like a bitter, you know, keep it moving. Ever since I met you, my life has been worse. Go away,
It's
right?
such a banger.
It's a very digestible song in a lot of ways. And so I think it's interesting that you mentioned that because I think his voice was the voice of Latin trap by the time this album came out.
Totally.
And the next question is, who were you most surprised to interview for the book, or who was your favorite interview?
That's my favorite question. We interviewed so many great people. And for me, as someone who studied reggaeton for a very long time, interviewing Tainy was just crazy. I mean, that was like a dream. That was something I never thought was going to happen. We talked to him for a little over 4 hours in his studio in Miami, about his career, about his influences. I mean, it was really fantastic to hear him reflect on his career. And again, he's only right now 36 years old. He was younger than that when we interviewed him. So shout out to Tainy, that was great. But I think everybody, I want to say, and also talking to Mag has been incredible, like hearing the stories of how they make these songs, the kind of interesting synergy and it's almost, they don't describe it this way, but when I hear them talk about it, it's almost like they live in each other's brains, you know, that they can like, they're like, do you want to do this? Yeah, wait, oh my God. Okay, yeah. I don't know if anybody's ever seen The Wire, but there's this like very famous scene in The Wire where the two detectives are trying to figure out who shot through this window and they don't speak. They just like walk around and point and go like, and they solve the crime. I feel like that's what I think of when I think of Mag and Bad Bunny and Tainy working together to make these songs. So those were fabulous.
I mean, yeah, everybody was amazing. I guess we interviewed Cacho Lopez Mari like what feels like 100 times. And I think that one of the interviews I did with him, which was specifically about the Festival de la Esperanza, which was the big closing event for the 2024 campaign for La Alianza, it was just like it was almost like we were both just like in tears and overwhelmed with just like the gravity of that moment. It was super cool to hear about kind of Bad Bunny and his decision to participate. But I have to shout out De La Ghetto because just speaking with him, like if you want to hear the most beautiful Spanglish you've ever heard in your life, like he was the one, or we were like, oh, we don't know, should we send him the Spanish one or the English one or both? It's like he is the most like truly Spanglish speaker ever. It's beautiful. So I just want to shout that out.
All right, and then the final question from Zoom is, as Bad Bunny is an advocate, actionist, and one of the faces of the Puerto Rican resistance, but the anti-ICE and anti-current administration, it's become dangerous for him. Would you talk about the danger he faces? And they also wanted to know about like the mental toll and supporting him, I guess, through this.
The interesting question, and I just want to put out there that we didn't interview Bad Bunny for the book, and we've never discussed this. I feel like the mental toll, like I don't know. I can only speculate. I don't know if you have something to say. I think we're in a particularly difficult time, right? And so I think that is part of what makes things dangerous. I mean, we have literally people being assassinated by ICE for protesting, right? Or, but I guess this, I don't know if this really answers the question, but I think what I would say is that what he's doing now, we are in this heightened moment. But again, he's always been doing it, right? He's always, maybe the critique has changed a little bit. Maybe the topic has changed a little bit, but what he's doing now is totally not surprising and what he has always done. I don't know if you have something to add.
Do you have anything you want to add to that? I don't know if you've been kind of privy to kind of anything that you think.
I would just say, as someone who has talked to him, I think the only thing I can, again, I haven't talked to him in sort of this next phase of his life. But even I think from the beginning, I think it's really clear that he, like you kind of get at the book, there's this tension of he feels like a regular guy, even though he's a giant superstar, and he feels incredibly connected to who he is as a Puerto Rican. And I think I would just say that you can see the weight of that in many, many times in his career. I think that's a lot for anyone to take on, but I don't think it's taken away from his message or his artistry or how he goes about it.
Yeah, and I guess we don't know. We've heard the rumors that he's like wearing armor, and it definitely appears that way. And he seems to be kind of like taxed in different ways by that. And it's, I think that it just, yeah, again, is in line with what we know about him and where his priorities are.
I think it says something that he's limited the amount of interviews that he's done around this time.
I think you mentioned his being an activist and also about speaking in Spanish. Can you comment about his film Puerto Rico, which is being he has to film it in Dominican Republic because of the governor Gonzalez? You think that that they'll be able to recall her like they did Rosselló?
I mean,
He's playing Albizu Campos.
on the film. But I think, again, it's not an accident, right? And Residente and Bad Bunny have a very long relationship, right? And I think that the fact that they're working together on this film, and I think we can get ideas of what it's called about, right? It's not called Puerto Rico. It's called Puerto Rico with an O. And that is, right, the name that the United States initially used to refer to their new colony. So I'm super excited. That is, but yeah, I mean, I think it's, and I think it's horrible that they can't film it in Puerto Rico. That's an absolutely ridiculous thing. Yes.
Hola. Many of us in this room are artists, organizers, and cultural workers who believe storytelling can shift how people understand history and power. After reading P FKN R, the question becomes, now what? What is one concrete action artists and cultural producers could start doing over the next few weeks to move these ideas from the page into our communities and creative space?
Well, I mean, I think the whole point, right, is that the pages come from the action. Like, we don't have the book without the action. And Bad Bunny it's not just him, right? There are many other artists. And I think that we see the kind of cultivation of that. When I was working on another piece for Julissa about the impact of the residency, I spoke with artists like Chuy and Los Pleneros de la Cresta, who are all involved in like massive projects in Puerto Rico. Los Pleneros de la Cresta have been fundraising, including doing these kind of like side tours around the residency to get people to come to their hometown of Ciales and basically help them rebuild that community center. So in fact, like there's all of these different branches of that just from Bad Bunny alone of projects that he has kind of helped to fortify. And I think that that's the thing, right? Is that we can't just, it's not just him. He's this global voice, but I think that if we look at the sort of expansiveness of who he's working with and who those artists are working with, that we actually see that there are all these ongoing projects. So in terms of what artists can do, I think it's really taking a page from artists like Los Pleneros de la Cresta, who are very much like grounded in how do we work towards building community, organizing, and also I think that we like to think about our work as an extension about that, right? Like you cannot work towards change if you don't have the knowledge about what's going on. So how do we teach people so that they understand the gravity, so that then they get interested to do research? Like our students are engaged in all kinds of activist work, but they mostly, like we have some Puerto Rican students, but they're mostly not Puerto Rican, who then are like, how do we get involved, right? And so I think it's really important, the knowledge piece, and then that dissemination, and really it requires people to do a bit of that research on the front end and speak to what is sort of most important to them.
I just want to add one quick thing, sort of similar to what you were saying, and I think it's related to what we're doing in the book, is I think what's really important about Bad Bunny is because of his visibility and his clout, right? We can kind of take advantage of that because people are finally paying attention to Puerto Rico, right? When I was a kid, you know, my father, I learned a lot about Puerto Rico because my dad would be like, oh, you have a report? Here's a thing about Puerto Rico you could do for your report, right? But I wasn't learning that in school. And when I was talking about it, not a lot of people were caring around me. And now suddenly, people who have no idea, right? When I started my class, I would get a lot of students who really didn't understand that colonialism was still a contemporary thing happening in the United States. Now, many of them do. And I think a lot of that is because they listen to Bad Bunny and he talks about it in his songs. So I feel like, you know, that's what makes him such a great tool for teaching, a hook to like get into this history. And I think I kind of feel like now is a moment. And I know that there are many people who are sort of critical of this idea that you could be an activist and a superstar. But regardless of what you think about that, like to me, now is a moment that to like sort of sneakily get your stuff in there and then do your thing, right? That's my thought.
Hi. Hi. My question is actually a follow-up on this same topic that you just addressed, and it addresses censorship. Certainly, Bad Bunny has a huge platform, and in a room full of artists, we all do, right? There's exposure, social media, everything, and I just reflect on what you mentioned about him being intentionally throughout his career, and certainly a lot of artists choose that intentionality of advocacy, social justice, speaking out about their lived experiences and also experiences coming from their territories. So, and then I wonder, right, the different privileges based on the size of that platform. And I always think and sit of this question ever since, for a long time, but mainly since the album came out. Is there power dynamics, politics, fear that sometimes hold artists with big platforms back? Not the case of Bad Bunny specifically, but I do think about other artists who have this huge platform and privilege, and they still intentionally choose not to address these topics in their art. And even when asked by journalists or media and everything, they just deviate from the topic, and it also paralyzed me sometimes when actually their audiences are these very same people who need their advocacy. So absolutely, thoughts on that would be appreciated.
I mean, I think you want to. Go ahead. There's so much that we could like talk about this all night because I think this is a really important point. I thought about this a lot with the Super Bowl, right? Where people, I think that I think it's very common for people to say that something is not political when it is fundamentally political. So like the NFL, right? Well, we chose Bad Bunny. It's just like because he's the biggest star, which is true. It was a financial decision. But for the NFL to act as if they're not political is also a lie, right? They're like biggest leaders in the NFL. Many of the owners, they contribute to campaigns, namely, right, the Trump campaign. It's very clear that there is political support in certain places. And so it is interesting where it feels like there's moments where it feels really contradictory, but we know it is political if you say that your players can't kneel in protest. That's political too, right? And so I think that artists as well sometimes say, well, that's not political, right? It's just like people critique athletes. Oh, that's not politics. You shouldn't be infusing your politics, or tell an artist, just stick to the music. You shouldn't be talking about art is political. It is, right? And so I think that it can be convenient for people to deny that reality. And I also think with someone like Bad Bunny, he doesn't speak about every single issue. And I think the thing that the kind of ask is stand for something. It doesn't have to be everything. You can't fix everything. You can't speak to everything. You can't be an advocate for every single cause. But what are you actually about? What is the point? And I think like as academics and journalists too, it's like, are you just researching for research sake? Are you just writing for No, what is the goal here, right? What are you actually working towards? And I think that's kind of like the call to action that I do think he doesn't stand for everything. He is a flawed person. He's a person and he cannot do it all. He's not gonna save us all. But can we look at this as a model for people with platforms using it wisely and standing for something?
Thank you so much. My name is Christian, for educating a lot of us who came to love Bad Bunny or Benito way later. So we weren't really accompanying the story. So it really gives us more love and pride for what he is and what he represents. And I'll be honest, I'll be the first one like Bad Bunny to go down for my people. I remember I got fired from a job because I wanted to include a picture of Bad Bunny wearing that bustier for Madonna, like pointing thing for middle schoolers. And I wanted middle schoolers to say on a scale of 1 to 5, do you agree with this picture? Or can people do that? And the white teacher, La Blanquita, dijo que no. You had to take that picture out. I said, what? You coming for my people? What? I said, you're bringing your puritanical Christian views onto our culture and we're different, right? So I will go as hard for Bad Bunny. And I lost my job for Bad Bunny. And that's okay because that's what we got to do. But I'm here not to share flaws of Bad Bunny, but I do think it's important we name the contradictions, right? Adidas invests in the apparatus in Israel, and he has shoes in the color of Cabo Rojo and Yunque green, where Yunque is being sold bit by bit, and Cabo Rojo is up for sale with Project Esencia. No comment. He wants to bring Amazon. Again, in technology in Amazon is important infrastructure for Zionism, right? To exist and for mass surveillance, right? And these jobs are non-unionizing and they promote consumerism. And those jobs are being brought to Puerto Rico, right? We have in the presentation in Benito Bo, caña, pero no hay bomba. Borraron la historia negra, right? And so we have Lady Gaga, which does bring a collectivity. White people, we love you. You can be with us, right? It's not about hate, it's about love. Pero she supports Zionism and is very active in her role against Israel, right? And so the question is, what is resistance? What is performance, marching, and storytelling, right? Because Lolita Lebron was very clear. Yo no vine a matar a nadie. Yo vine a morir por mi país. I didn't come here to kill nobody in Congress. I came to shoot fires, for my people. And she thought she was going to die, and she didn't. And she was released, and she continued to be with the people and be grassroots. So how do we move beyond performance, right? And how do we get Benito to support all of us, right? To share that wealth. Let's be very honest here in El Barrio, Julia de Burgos. Very important for our cultural preservation. We don't know the future of that building. The People's Church, so important to our collective history and preserving our narrative. No solo como boricuas, pero personas como migrantes que formaron una parte de esta historia, right? That place is in economic shambles. El Maestros, boxing in South Bronx. They said, we'll be back next month. Where is their location? They had to close. If you go to Maestros, they had all these murals of all of our próceres and all of our leaders. And it was boxing and education and culture. They had to close, right? More Street, La Marqueta, we saw highlighted in Benito Bowl, amazing. But we have other places like Moore Street Market in Brooklyn that are vulnerable as well. In Puerto Rico, our sacred Taino sites are for threat to erase our history of our ancestors. Our elders are dying alone, where some elders get dropped off in the emergency room because the neighbor finds them and they don't know what else to do. No tiene condiciones de cuidar de los demás. So they just leave them in an emergency room, right? Cuba y Puerto Rico son de un pájaro las dos alas. We have to remember these both Puerto Rico and Cuba flags were made here in El Barrio. And we have abandoned our Cuban brethren who are starving right now. And Benito has been silent about that.
Yeah. Vanessa,
We,
why don't you take
and just wrapping it up, right? It's scary to think that we're going to go down this endless train of being neutral, okay? So I just want to make it very clear. How do we get out of this endless cycle of neutrality for our own sake and for all of the Caribbean?
Thank you, Maestro, for laying out so many of these points that are well taken, right? Yeah, no, that's right. And we're professors, and we're also, you know, constantly having to continue to be educated as well, right? That's part of what it means to teach, is to keep learning. Everything you said is entirely valid. These are all things that exist. These are all crises that exist. These are all contradictions that I think are absolutely there. I have many things to say, and I will try to like sum up some ideas about this, which I mean, I had just spoken in response to the last community member who was up here, which is that I absolutely also don't think he can or will speak to every crisis. I don't think he can fix everything. I said this last night, right? He's not our Lord and Savior. He is not the revolutionary warrior hero who's gonna save us all. Like, absolutely
We don't need
not.
savior.
No, absolutely not, right? So I think that I think there's multiple things. One thing is that contradiction is one thing that we're all living in, right? Like,
Absolutely.
I teach on a campus that's built on an indigenous burial ground. That's the reality. Every day my kids come to campus, my students are there, and I'm like, colonialism is alive and unwell. We're on top of it. This is what's happening right now. And I teach at that institution, and my institution is religious. And at the end of the day, I'm getting paid by the Catholic Church. Okay. We are all implicated. I have bought things from Amazon. I don't know where the money from my cell phone bill goes. I'm sure that some of my clothes were made in really fucked up conditions. This is the condition of late capitalism. We're all implicated, all of us. Right. And so this is an extension of the tension of Bad Bunny being this massive superstar and also someone who's trying to speak to these things. The companies you mentioned, I am sure they're all evil, like, right? Like, they're evil, right? Like, this is the evil empire. These companies are evil. It's all part of this capitalistic machine that is killing us all. And so what do we do, right? But I also do not think that because we're all implicated in that, then we're all neutral. I don't think that he's neutral as an artist. I think that he speaks to certain things and he doesn't other things. I don't speak to every single issue either, even if I believe in, I do as much as I can, I think, but we can always push harder. So I think that bringing these things up is super important, and also recognizing that everyone has limitations and no one is perfect either. Bad Bunny, for example, when we were at the residency, what we learned was actually, like, the night that we went, it was activists for these different projects who were actually called by Bad Bunny's team to come be outside of El Choli to flyer and share, they had allocated space to talk about the projects in Rincon that are destroying the beachside, Esencia. They were actually the ones that Bad Bunny's team chose to have those spaces, and every single week it was rotating environmental groups that were able to take that space. So again, I don't think that he's perfect. I don't think that he's doing everything that a person can do. I think that we can take some sort of signals of how we can use platforms, but I don't think that kind of tasking him with taking on all of that. I think speaking to these contradictions is important, and it's also speaking to the contradictions of what it means to exist under capitalism. Que viva!
Okay, y'all. So that was our last question because we're running on time. Okay, on time. Pero les quería dar las gracias. A huge thank you to Julissa, to Petra, to Vanessa. I want to invite all of you to join us downstairs for a reception donde vamos a picar un poquito, okay? Y bailar maybe. Okay, nos vemos abajo. Gracias.